to episode 7 of the Liberty Mastermind Podcast. I'm Jack, along with Ox Holloway and Pat Leo. Tonight we'll be discussing the overview for the hiring process in the service professions with, of course, a few tips way up in there.
Tips?
And our new
tips.
segment,
Tips.
Like I'm
Tips?
tipsy. Way up in there. And our new segment, Deconstructing the News, right up front.
Boom.
Okay, segment 1. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. So the title of this article is Coast Guard Retaliates Against Whistleblower, a Retired Navy SEAL. So here's the quick 1,000-foot view. I'm a little bit tipsy as well, okay, but that's a good thing. So there's this guy.
Tipsy.
There's this guy, Chris Sajnog, and it is not pronounced like it's spelled. So this guy is a Navy SEAL, leaves the service, does a bunch of training, and the U.S. Coast Guard picks him up as a contractor, which means he's a civilian, but he works in a government position. And the Coast Guard says, hey, we need you to train our guys. He says, great, I'd love to. So the Coast Guard actually has some pretty high-speed units. Not a lot of people know that. I actually served at the sister unit to where this guy taught. And they were both counter-narcotics, counter-piracy units. So we jump out of helicopters with machine guns, and Chris Sajnog says, I'll train your guys how to do close-quarters combat and shooting and fighting and all this stuff. Sajnog has a issue with the Coast Guard command, and he believes they are retaliating against him for being a whistleblower. So basically, Sajnog says, the Coast Guard's not doing the right things, and they're acting outside their policy. And the Coast Guard command says to him, we're your bosses, shut up. And he says, this isn't right. So he goes up the chain. And then his bosses say, you shouldn't have done that. And you should just be quiet. And now we're going to make your work more miserable. So he files a complaint. And then thus ensues crazy drama. And he's not very happy about it. And he no longer works for the Coast Guard. So that's the 1,000-foot view. So Ox, if you want to kind of work with me, and we're going to kind of pick this apart from the beginning.
Yeah, did you mention the website that had the article? I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, I did not. This is from thegunwriter.com, and there is a link in our show notes on our website, libertymastermindpodcast.com.
Yeah, are we kind of going just picking through the article you said?
Yeah, I'll read a couple quotes to get us started. Sajnog is a retired Navy SEAL, an experienced sniper, and a much sought-after firearms instructor. He wrote the curriculum for the Navy SEAL Sniper Training Program, the same program that trained American sniper Chris Kyle. This is all from the article. He has 2 combat deployments, Bosnia and Darfur. He retired in 2009 as a Chief Petty Officer, which is an E7 in the Navy. He is 100% disabled. He says that is combat related. He has written 2 books about firearms training, How to Shoot Like a Navy SEAL and Navy SEAL Shooting. And the Coast Guard hired him to train its members in close quarter battle techniques and other tactics. So he retires in 2009. And he starts working for DHS, Department of Homeland Security, as a GS-12, GS-13. Starts as a GS-12 and then a GS-13. Those are kind of rankings in the government for how much you get paid and what level authority you have. And then he's a GS-13 while teaching tactics to the U.S. Coast Guard Pacific Tactical Law Enforcement Team. And the acronym you're going to hear throughout this episode is PAC-TACLET, is the unit he trained at for the Coast Guard. They have 2 teams, PAC-TACLET and TACLET South. They're on different sides of the country. And they specialize in high-risk security boardings and counter-narcotics. And I actually worked for TACLET South for counter-piracy operations. So this is my favorite quote. And then after this, Ox, maybe you'll jump in and start taking over. So here's the quote from the article. Sajnog says, after 9/11, the Coast Guard needed to know how to do high-risk boardings. They started training on their own, watching videos online. Then they hired a couple Army Special Forces guys to teach them boardings. I'm not knocking Special Forces, I love my SF brothers, but they taught them how to do nighttime underway boardings in a building during the day. let me start by deconstructing that. I have a little bit of behind-the-scenes information.
Hold on, can I say something?
Yeah,
first?
yeah.
Now, when you first brought this article up, I was super busy, but I kind of read it very quickly, and my first thought was, this guy sounds like a little bitch.
That's funny you should say that. We're going to hold on to that.
But I think it was written to make it sound that way.
That's
And especially
very important.
after
yeah.
I talked to you, because like that first thing, about doing boarding training in a building during the day instead of on a boat at night, I was like, are they really? They're not that fucking stupid. Like, really, they are.
Really glad you said that. That's my favorite quote. Half of that is my favorite quote in the whole article. And yeah, you're right. There's a difference between the person and the person writing the article and the article itself. So we're already mixed up. And I'm sure you and our audience will not be surprised that the media is not the best at painting a picture of truth.
What?
Yeah. Liberty Mastermind Podcast. So, okay, let me start at the beginning of that quote. After 9/11, the Coast Guard needed to know how to do high-risk boarding. Well, it's supposed to be boardings, not do high-risk boarding, but whatever. Yes, that's true. We also did high-risk boardings way before 9/11. Specifically, our two units, Pacific Tacklet, Pac Tacklet, and Tacklet South. We did high-risk boardings way before 9/11. And I also believe we had contractors teaching us how to do that. Maybe it wasn't as prevalent, but we did have some pretty cool people training us before that. I wasn't there for that, but I'm pretty sure that that's legitimate information.
So boarding, high-risk boarding was not a foreign concept when
Correct.
Sajnog.
Like, take a sigh and then a sip of eggnog. Sajnog.
I've been drinking heavily. When Sajnog signed on.
Yeah, so he says he signed on, where is it at here? He retired in 2009 from the Navy as a Chief Petty Officer. And then he began working for the Department of Homeland Security, so this is somewhere around 2009. I actually started around that time at the sister unit as well, around 2009 or so. It might have been before. Yeah, I might have been there before that. But I've been drinking as well. So it's actually boardings. How to do high-risk boarding is kind of an awkward phrase. Boardings, plural. How to do boardings, like how to do traffic stops. You don't say, we're going to train cops in how to do traffic stop. It sounds funny. So I don't know if that, and I'm pretty sure that's not Sajnog's issue. I believe that's the person that wrote the article is probably not familiar with the Coast Guard. And we'll see who that is too. I didn't really take a look at his profile. So let's get moving along here. They started training on their own, watching videos online. Does he mean after 9/11 they did that? Or in 2009 they did that when he got there? Or does he mean before 9/11 they started? So already, it would be nice if maybe
and it kind of makes it sound like YouTube videos.
That's exactly what it sounds like. And YouTube wasn't as prevalent in 2001. Like, everyone didn't flock there for shooting training. And I'm pretty sure we had curriculums. And now there is a flip side to this too. So the Coast Guard is not the holy grail for high-speed training. Well, because later in this quote, he says, they taught them how to do high-risk, nighttime, underway. Underway means moving through the water on a boat. High-risk, nighttime, underway boardings taught in a building during the day. That is absolutely accurate. 100%.
And when you told me that, my jaw hit the floor. Like, that was the first thing I said to you. Like, this guy sounds like a fucking douchebag because you guys aren't going to do that kind of training.
That's correct.
And you said, we actually did. And I was like, oh my God.
Yes, that was how they trained me. And I put my hand up and I said, I have a question. When I'm on a boat and the boat's riding through the water and I'm about to board another boat and I see a gun and I shoot somebody and I miss and I shoot the wrong person, I said, isn't someone going to ask me how often I've trained how to shoot from one boat to another boat? Because I've never ever done that in my life, even in training. I've stood in a building and shot like paint bullets at people. I've stood on a range and shot bullets at people. I've been in a live fire shoot house. I have never been on a boat shooting onto another boat, or on a boat shooting not a boat, or not on a boat shoot, like none of it ever involved a boat. That's the Coast Guard. So there's already two very different sides of this story here. One is he is definitely correct that the training is bullshit, or it was bullshit before he got there, at least. The other side is, it's not so correct that we were fucking hanging around like, let's have a beer and turn on YouTube, bro, and learn how to do a high-risk boarding. That didn't happen. Well, people might have watched videos, but I'm sure that the Coast Guard command didn't say, ominous deus, I approve it, go watch some videos online and then come back to me with what you got. That seems ridiculous as well. So, well, yeah, go ahead.
Is there any chance that, this is like part of the story, like the idea of learning nighttime boarding during the day? Like, I imagine maybe you would start out learning how to do it during the daytime when you can see and just kind of get a sense of the pace and whatever, and then you transition.
Yeah, like a walkthrough.
Yeah, like you're going to transition to, your night vision and everything else, and spend the bulk of your training in the environment or time of day that you're going to be doing that. Is there any chance of that?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure Sajnog will probably agree if we can get him on the show here. I tried to reach out to him, but the timing was short. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting your training slow and then moving into a more realistic environment. I think that's totally normal.
Smart.
But no, my entire time, I spent about 4.5 years at one of those units at a TACLET, and I never trained on a moving boat and boarding another moving boat, practicing how to do my job. Never did it.
Wow.
It was also we did train at night, but it wasn't very frequent, but we did train at night sometimes. Okay, so let's get into the issue with the article. The article's big issue. So he starts raising concerns. He says, if you're not training in the actual environment, you're not training. And the command goes, well, it's fine. That seems completely reasonable, because I've raised my hand in training and I've said, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had a boat? And they go, well, logistics and money. Well,
we are the Coast Guard.
We have boats. I don't know if you know this or not. Well, we can't, we got to do paperwork and request it. So let's do that. So that seems legitimate. Student, and then Sajnog says in the article, this is a quote, as soon as I started raising concerns, they started trying to push me out of there. They couldn't because they didn't have a reason. Seems normal. I'll buy that. So there are federal documents filed in his whistleblower case from 2009 to 2013. And Sajnog also, this is a quote, made verbal and written safety disclosures to the command, all regarding specific firearms safety violations. And this is during training. We can maybe pick something like that apart in a little bit. So he starts documenting all these issues, and let's see, the leadership was about the violations, official reports made leadership. His major issues that he was reporting about was 2 major safety violations per training event. So those are things like someone pointing a loaded gun at another person, someone shooting their gun accidentally before they're supposed to, and he says that these things were happening twice per event. That may be hard to prove, and that if you guys are familiar with some maybe tactical training or even range training at a beginner level, sometimes things aren't what they seem on the range, like especially with angles and where you're standing and how things look.
Right.
If we're standing next to each other and I turn to the right, but I don't turn all the way, I'm not pointing my gun at you, like if we're in a shooting line, and I rotate to the right. Well, if someone's 30 yards back and they see the barrel of my gun pointing to the right, they may think, you just pointed your gun at the person next to you. And we're standing here like, no, we didn't. Neither of us did. It's pointed way off at an angle in front of us, but from behind us, you can see the whole side profile of my gun.
At the level of training, and I don't know this guy. I don't know this Sajnog guy, but he's a former SEAL, right? So at his level of training, I would think that he probably wouldn't say anything unless you were obviously like.
I would think that's correct, and it's hard for me to say, but I've also spent a lot of time in these training environments, and I do know that we got to be careful when you assume blatantly that one person or another person is correct.
Right, absolutely.
Which will bring us to our next quote. So this is Sajnog. I guess this is him writing. So this is, quote, Petty Officer Potts has repeated problems with basic weapons handling at a live fire range, Sajnog wrote. I stopped him and warned him 3 times before he pointed his weapon at an instructor. Failure to follow basic instructions. Did not know how his weapon worked or where the safety switch was on the weapon. We're going to come back to that later, that safety switch issue, and the Petty Officer Potts issue. So let me talk about that. Our units we're not Navy SEALs, even though some of the guys I've worked with like to pretend that they are. We did some pretty cool high-speed stuff, but we're not Navy SEALs. There are people that get sent to our unit in the Coast Guard that may spend 12 or 13 or 14 years behind a desk counting engine parts. And then they say, hey, where do you want to get transferred to at your next military unit? And then they write they click on their little computer. Oh, there's a spot open in San Diego, California. What's a pack-tacklet? I don't know what that is. Sounds good. I'll go there. And they show up with all their rank and all their military experience, which means looking at a computer screen and counting engine parts. So they show up. They've maybe held a gun once or twice throughout their Coast Guard career. These things happen. You get into this high-speed unit because we had issues with selection processes. We didn't have a Navy SEAL selection. We didn't have buds. We even at one point did have a selection process that seemed like it was weeding, losers out or people that didn't fit, and that's subjective too. But it was optional because I didn't go through that process, and I got into the unit while that process existed. So riddle me that. So these people, there are people that show up that don't belong there, period, and they get there on accident, and they don't want to be there. But it's the military, so you show up, you do what you're told, even if you don't fit in, even if this isn't your forte. So that's possible, but I've never met Petty Officer Potts. I've also never met Mr. Sajnog. So that one I kind of have to leave open to being possible.
Okay.
Now let me scan in this article a little bit, unless you guys see something first.
While you're scanning, I mean, the only thing I can, aside from the article, the only thing I can maybe throw out there is I've heard Chris Sajnog on another podcast that the three of us listen to. I heard him on that podcast within the past maybe 6 months or so. I don't remember when the episode aired.
Hey, throw some love out to that podcast.
Okay, well, it's the Survival Podcast. So I heard Sajnog on the Survival Podcast within the past 6 months.
The link to that specific podcast will be in our show notes, by the way.
Yeah, and I think the interview was within the past year, so from summer 2016 to summer 2017, somewhere in there. But the way he answered questions and the way he talked about training people and how to use and shoot a firearm, especially beginners, had me hooked to the point where I got both of his books electronically, just to see if I could go through and kind of glean out any new pearls or anything like that. I thought he did a really good job in the interview. So, for the people on the fence or people on either side, maybe have a listen to him on the podcast. Use that as some info to kind of think about.
I need to go back and listen to that podcast. I don't remember that one. I might have missed it, but
it was good. Yeah.
I do need to go back. I keep saying this over and over again, but not having heard this guy, this article made him sound like a complete douchebag.
Yeah,
like just a whiny ass. Like I read the thing and I was like, dude, I want to fucking slap this guy. I'm sorry for cussing so much. I'm kind of.
Well, you might find this interesting here. So I got the next little quote here we're going to use. So Sajnog documented in a training report that Potts could not come back to the range and that he should never carry a weapon. However, the Coast Guard allowed Potts back to the range the next day, where a U.S. Coast Guard firearms instructor allowed him to qualify with his weapon so he could deploy the next week. I don't know if this happened or not, but I can tell you completely possible, because I've seen very, very, very similar things happen multiple times.
We also need to point out that he said pointing a loaded weapon at another person, which we've mentioned before, and negligent discharges, plural.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once is a pretty big deal, but multiple times,
I find that one a little more difficult to believe. In the units that I was in, and in the Coast Guard at large, per training event, there were multiple discharges. I don't think that's possible. That is a very big deal in the Coast Guard, maybe in the military at large, but I know for us, when one person anywhere in the whole Coast Guard has a negligent discharge, everyone in the Coast Guard hears about it the next day. And I don't mean from the rumor mill. I mean, someone writes on a document, this person had a negligent discharge. It happened here at this time. These people were involved. Here's how it happened.
That's even a big deal in the civilian world. And it happens. I mean,
it does happen.
I saw a YouTube video where, what's his name? Dragonfly logo.
Travis Haley.
Yeah, Travis Haley had a negligent. I'm starting to slur.
Indeed.
Negligent discharge with an AK. So I mean, it happens.
Yeah, and he's the freaking Michael Jordan of shooting.
Yeah, he's Billy Bass.
Who's that?
Travis Haley. I believe he was a U.S. Marine. And then he left the Marines to work for, I believe, Blackwater. And he's got a great YouTube clip of him on the Najaf rooftop, or it was across from the Najaf Hotel. I don't know the exact details, but I saw the video, and I met Travis Haley. I went to one of his courses. It was awesome.
Nice.
And the thing I liked about him most is he does some actual critical thinking.
Yeah, I like how he breaks things down.
Yes,
I really do.
He's not very old school, which is great. And I've had some old school instructors that say, you got to take your revolver here, you got to point it this way. And Travis Haley does not do that. He says, why do we do this? Is this important? This technique we've been using to train, is it effective? What if you don't use it? Like, I love that. Oh, it's awesome.
I do too. Like, I haven't had a class with him yet, but I've watched a lot of his stuff, and we think the same, like I can see his thought process, and I'm like, dude, thank you.
Let me power through this a little more.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So Sajnog says, Potts is not an isolated case. There were dozens more just like him. I find that hard to believe. I know this community very well, and my unit was about roughly 100 operators, roughly in 10 different teams of 10. And There were definitely maybe two guys at my unit that definitely didn't belong there, but there weren't dozens. That would mean at least 12, maybe 24 or more. So there weren't 24 or more terrible, terrible, terrible shooters. That wasn't the case, period. And that one, I'm telling you right now, is on my code of ethics. That one, I believe, I have no evidence except for my personal experience at the sister unit. I can tell you my experience at my unit, we did not have dozens of terrible shooters. We had some very, very high quality shooters. We had a couple mediocre shooters. And of course we had one or two people that did not belong there. One or two. That's it. So he has a claim about EMTs not being on the range. I know that there's something similar to this where the word EMT doesn't mean what you think it means. Jack, you might be able to speak a little bit about this, but in the military we don't have the same rules as you.
Right.
We can write our own rules. So if you have a certified EMT, then you have one. Or if you send someone to a live tissue rescue school or live tissue combat trauma school, TCCC, which is what I went to, I practiced saving goats' lives. We shot them in the lungs, kept them breathing, decompression needles, IVs, tourniquets. Well, I'm technically a Coast Guard medical person. I can deploy as an EMT, even though I never went to EMT school.
Right.
So I know this may have been the issue where it was just wordage.
That's kind of what I thought.
What else do we? Go ahead.
Even as an EMT, we're not technically, according to national standards, we're not allowed to do um, packing, like wound packing and stuff like that.
That's weird because I can, and I'm not an EMT.
I know, and that's what pisses me off. Like, having my EMT credentials prevents me from doing so much that I know how to do. It's so stupid. It's infuriating. Like, I almost didn't want to take the test because as a good Samaritan, quote unquote, I could do more
Yeah.
than as a licensed professional EMT.
When I went through the police academy, I asked my instructor, I said, hey, in the military, I've had live tissue training with tourniquets and wound packing and needle decompressions and IVs. I said, what if I do that to someone in the field to save their life? They're like, well, you're not covered. I'm like, great, so pretend I don't know how to save a life. And they were like, yup. Hashtag government.
Yep.
This is where he starts to sound like when people make these claims that you're going to hear about in a minute, like the claim you said he sounds like a little bitch. This is where it starts to kind of sound like that. They said they were not concerned about safety because of not having an EMT. They said they think that I was training unsafe. This was when any safety concern I raised resulted in a childish, we're not unsafe, you are, go Coast Guard. So that's Sajonog's quote. This is where the author, at least, starts to make him sound like a little whiny bitch. Let's be clear, I want him to come on the show. I'm really interested in his experience because I've had several bad experiences with Coast Guard Command as well. So I'm not saying he's a little bitch, but I'm saying whoever wrote this made him sound like he's complaining over things that are silly. And that's just what it sounds like.
Yeah, honestly, when I read this, that's what I thought. And then I talked to you, and I was like, oh.
So I wouldn't say I'm on his side. I would say I'm on the side of critical thinking because
Right.
I would very much like to interview him. But I see several points in this article that he could be or is very correct in his statements. And they are legitimate concerns. And the Coast Guard is legitimately screwing up. And all the times when he says, the command just told me to not do it. The command told me to not write safety concerns up. The command told me it's fine, just go with it. I've had those experiences, and it sucks.
I don't doubt that. I mean, I've had those experiences with local government and emergency situations. And it's really, honestly, it's scary.
So let me brush through the next several paragraphs in one fell swoop. They tell him not to send up paperwork anymore about safety concerns. I can see that being completely possible. He says that after his complaints up the chain of command, they changed his title from senior instructor to just kinda instructor. I believe that's possible that they did that. He says they sent people to his training site to oversee his training to see if he's training unsafe. Well, I can believe that they sent people there to oversee training, but I don't know if it's... I wouldn't stake my claim that they were sent there to get him fired or sent there to make sure he's, a claim that he's unsafe. I would say that sometimes when you file safety concerns about training,
they got to send someone up.
They might, by policy, have to send people to see the training. So while he may be correct that if they saw him being unsafe, they were going to burn him, that's possible, sure. But that also might be policy. So, and I don't have all the details because this is just one short article, but... So that's a bunch of stuff that's going on in this article. So he had some medical stress issues where he believed he had the legal right to take leave, and the Coast Guard said, no, you don't. And he said, I have a lawyer. My lawyer told me not to come in, and they said, we don't care. Just yesterday, I had a meeting with a Coast Guard doctor about what I legally deserve. He had no clue what the hell he was doing. I walked out of there feeling worse than when I walked in. I have nothing to show for it. I went to physical therapy today, towards the end of my contract, trying to get healed. I called the Coast Guard and said, hey, I just found out from my physical therapy people I have 2 visits left. And the Coast Guard said, that's funny. How long have you been going? I said, about 2 months, 3 times a week. And they said, really? We have no record that you've ever attended. Do you care to answer for that? And I said, yeah, idiot. I've gone about 30 or 40 times now in the last month, so... What's the holdup? So him having medical issues and leave issues and the command not giving a shit or not having the right info, that is completely believable. And that brings us towards the bottom of the article where he says he has 500 pages of evidence and he's going to make it public. I've seen, after this, we're going to talk about some opposite claims from that community that he's worked in. So thoughts from you guys while I get that stuff ready?
I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Go ahead, Ox.
I'll jump in while you're we're gonna get you some coffee next time.
Hey, look, I'm out of town, and I normally don't drink because I'm always on call.
Oh yeah, so that's right. You're right.
I'm visiting the in-laws right now, and I am relaxing.
Earned it. Just hearing this and hearing everybody talk over, it just reminds me a lot of the stuff unmilitary related. The stuff we hear on the news that pits one group against another and just stirs it up. Maybe we have partial truths from both sides, and it's messy, and it's just to create drama. That's what this reminds me of. I get like 2 sentences into the article and I can already tell that it's outside of my sphere of influence. I'm not U.S. Coast Guard or the Special Tactics Units. I'm not Naval Special Warfare. My mind is like, end of story. If I wasn't part of Liberty Mastermind Podcast, my thought process would be about the same. Like, getting worked up over this or anything similar, spending my mental resources getting worked up over this is like zero productive. There's zero productivity there. I think for me, a better question to ask is, how can I beef up my own self-sufficiency, my self-reliance? How can I take my home, make it a homestead? That is something a home that produces something, like my poultry here on my homestead produce eggs. How can I improve my health, my spirituality, my relationship with my girl, my fill in the blank? So, like I said, I get about 2 sentences into this and my eyes glaze over. I'll kind of wrap up my soapbox with love in my heart to the Coast Guard and Mr. Sajnog, who I do not know. They're not, neither groups or neither are going to make me a better person or feed my quail or take care of my homestead or take care of my mother or anything like that. So I'm going to focus on the only person I do have influence over, which is me. Next, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
that's about as far as I get into articles like this and the news and drama at work. I'm just like, I gloss over. Step off the soapbox.
No, that's good. Great.
It's good stuff, man.
Jackie, you got anything, or else I'll wrap up this segment?
Something he said and I told you guys about this earlier. It kind of reminded me of this. I know it's out of your sphere of influence, and it's kind of out of mine. Mine's more of a civilian rescue, volunteer type thing. But I like doing stuff like this because it gets I would like to focus on the military community. These people a lot of times sign up because, for the same reasons that I've signed up for rescue, to help people to fulfill some sort of, I don't know, obligation that they feel, to protect freedom or what the fuck ever, I don't know. But there's so much training that goes into it and so much stuff that they're constantly fed that it kind of blinds them, and maybe it quiets some of those critical thinking skills,
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was telling you guys a Facebook article I saw where, like, Mike Ditka, I guess, the old Bears coach or current, I don't know. I don't really follow sports, but anyways, so this guy made some comment about the flag and whatever. And I think it was on Steve Reichardt's page or something like that. So I posted, wouldn't it be nice that if Americans cared about freedom and liberty as much as they cared about the flag and the geographical location that this country is in? And the first response I got was the standard, we have the most freedoms in the world, if you don't like it, you can leave type thing. And that just shows the closed-minded, non-thinking way that I think a lot of the military has, at least while they're in. Maybe they start waking up at some point. I know a lot of military people who have moved beyond that, and they're really focused on freedom and liberty. And I'm kind of lost where I'm going with this. But you guys know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and tie a bow on it on my end, and then we'll kind of get into our meat and potatoes of the article, which is the hiring process, which I'm really pumped about too. Okay, for me, sphere of influence, sphere of concern, this is definitely in both of them. I am definitely concerned about this in the article, and I'm actually curious if I get to talk to Mr. Sajnog what he thinks about the author and the article that he wrote up, because I have a sneaky suspicion he may not have been very happy with the article himself, because it feels like a lot of these quotes are off the cuff, so maybe it was a conversation that turned into an article. But sphere of influence, sphere of concern, which is very important in liberty. It's in my concern sphere, and it's in my influence sphere because I run a website, uncensoredtactical.com. I teach law enforcement, I teach military, and I teach the public how to do some critical thinking, how to upgrade their training, recommended reading. If you want to join the military or law enforcement, I mentor people on how to get through that process. And unfortunately, some of the people that I've worked with at these units, and some of which who have dealt with Mr. Sajnog, they are on a Facebook group that is a private, closed Facebook group. So I'm not going to say anybody's name, but I'm going to give you a few quotes of some of the people that were in the community that Mr. Sajnog was teaching to at the Coast Guard tactical units. So the very first quote in response to that article is, "That guy? F that guy." That's it. So while that is a great argument, it has no... It has no
merit,
no weight, no fact. So that's what we call an empty argument.
And you sent us screenshots of those comments, and
that's correct.
To me, it built up the fact that maybe this guy is telling more of the truth than this article is.
Yeah. Here's the other thing too. At your lower level, you don't always see what your command is doing. And the contractors that work at these units, they deal directly with the command, and they deal directly with you, but not at the same time. So they might not have known about the concerns that he was writing up, they might not have seen his reports that he was writing, and they may have been blindly pro-command, and they might have been like, my commander is the greatest, and this guy's training me, but he failed me, so I'm upset. And, well, okay, let's boil through the drama. So we'll scroll down a little bit. This comment says, "Didn't it seem like you or I," referring to the guy that made that comment, "you or I were always at the range or the shoot house as an EMT during that time frame?" That may not, while they may have often been there, we deployed all the time. There were different training events that the same members didn't go to the same training event every time. So they might not even be privy to all the events that happen or all the issues that happen. The next comment means nothing. Next comment means nothing. Next comment says, "Poor Potts," the guy in the argument, in the interview that was pulled off the range for a firearms incident. This guy says, "Poor Potts, you and I were at that first training event, and that didn't happen as he quoted," as Sajnog quoted. That may be correct, but it may not be Sajnog that said it wrong. It may be the reporter that wrote it wrong. And...
Hello?
I got you. Jackie there? Hey, Jackie.
Pat, we can't hear you.
Let me check. Stand by. All right, folks. If you're still with us, we had a slight technical issue, but hopefully you can still hear us now. So I might backtrack a little bit, so forgive me if you hear the same stuff twice. So there's a Facebook group of Coast Guard tactical operators that were either trained by that guy or were stationed at that unit that he trained at, or the sister unit, either one of the units. The first comment from one of these people that served at the unit about that guy was, "That guy? F that guy." That's in response to this article. So he's saying, F, Mr. Sajnog. The next comment says, "Hey, didn't it seem like you or me, we were always at the range or at the shoot house as an EMT during that time frame?" Here's why that might not be realistic. I never went. I was at that unit for 4+ years, not the unit Sajnog taught at, but the sister unit. I was there for 4+ years. I was deployed more than half the time. And the time that I was there, I didn't go to every training event. Every different team has their own training events scheduled. So because you were always somewhere, doesn't mean you saw everything, because there's other events you don't go to. So let's scroll down a little more. Bullshit comment, bullshit comment, bullshit. Okay, this says, "Poor Petty Officer Potts, you and I were at that training event, and that didn't happen as he quoted." Okay, I don't know what that means, but that's a claim that Sajnog's quote was not correct. So here's a guy that was one of my team leaders, and I had some issues with him as well. He says, "I don't know Petty Officer Potts, but if I was that guy, I would sue this bearded fuck for defamation." This is critical thinking at its best. I don't know him, and I wasn't there, but he's right, and he should sue that guy. Can you explain to me how you can have both?
Yeah, that's just bad.
This guy, I had real issues with him, the guy that made that statement. And he gets involved later.
Why?
Yeah, well, really. This is probably the same guy that says, "Yeah, freedom. If you don't hang your flag in your front door, I'm going to kick your ass. Because freedom." Right. Well, you can't have freedom and physically harming people because you disagree with them.
If you stomp on my flag, I stomp your ass.
So I want to bring some light to the public about what happens in the tactical community. And this is specifically for one of my favorite phrases ever in the world, which is, "Yeah, but aren't police or military specially trained to do shooting, blah, 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 blah?" Well, let me give you a little look behind the scenes. I wasn't present during this scenario, but I can tell you I've seen scenarios very similar to it in my personal experience. So here's a quote from one of the guys that served at a unit underneath Sajnog. So Sajnog was this guy's instructor, and he says, "Did he really want to make those scenarios realistic?" Because Sajnog talks about realistic training. And the guy continues, "Really? I just wish I had the experience and rank that I have now to deal with that guy back then. One of my first training events, right out of close quarters combat school, he hid a silhouette of a bad guy behind a 4-legged chair on a corner of the room, which my teammate and I did not see during the training, and we failed to clear that cardboard silhouette. I barely saw it sticking out, only after I had already moved around the room and cleared everything. So he, Sajnog, failed us. We got into an exchange of words after I argued that it would be impossible for an actual human being to use that as a hiding space and not be seen. So, let me continue. After going back and forth, he agreed to let me run the test again. Well, what a big effing mistake that was, as some of you might remember how that turned out. This guy is full of shit, F that guy." Let me pause real quick and back up. Picture this in your mind's eye. You have a 4-legged bar stool, right, in the corner of a room. You take a 3-foot by 4-foot cardboard cutout of a bad guy, so it's only like 2-dimensional, and you lean it against this 4-legged stool. So you barge into the room and you're looking for people, and you see a stool in the corner with a tiny sliver. You're looking at the profile of a piece of cardboard. So take a piece of cardboard, hold it in front of you, turn it to the side so you can only see the edge. So that's leaning up against a bar stool in the corner of a room. So you walk in and you go, "Well, no bad guys here." And the instructor goes, "Fail! There's a bad guy leaning against that bar stool. You're dead." Hold on a second. I don't know any human beings that are 1/8 of an inch thick all the way through. And I've had that happen to me, and people that were on my team, where you walk into a room and you open the door and you push the door all the way closed to the wall, and you clear the whole room, and then on your way out they go, "You're all dead," and we go, "Why? Did you see the bad guy behind the door?" Well, no, the door opened all the way flush against the wall. Yeah, but what if there was something like a hole or this or that? No, because we came in from a hallway. It's a center-fed room, which means the door's in the middle, and there's wall to the left and wall to the right. So as we were walking down the hallway, we turned, we entered the room. We knew there was no secret room because we would have walked through it in the fucking hallway. So you can't make a U-turn into the room and then back out of the room into a secret room. It doesn't exist. So I've had that happen to me. So I believe that that's possible, and I know for a fact that similar issues have happened at my unit with a Navy SEAL instructor and a full-time SWAT operator instructor who I knew personally. So that's a sister unit. We do the same training, same qualifications. We also hired Navy SEAL instructors at my unit, and I dealt with the same issue. So that's possible, sure. That may have happened, and I don't believe that that's out of the realm of possibility. So the rest of these comments are all, let's see, very negative, very negative, very negative. A typical sailor with sand in his crack. Okay, well, that's not a real argument. That's just complaining. If he's 100% disabled, he has no business teaching that level of tactics. Well, you could teach tactics in a wheelchair if you're smart, so, okay, that's BS.
Hey, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball.
Dip, dodge, dive, duck, and dodge. Okay, so yeah, you nailed it, man. Good point. Douche, wait for it, bag. Okay. There's a picture of Chris Sajnog, and on the picture it says, "Struggling with male menopause." Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, they're not very happy. So a bunch of people don't like him.
They attack their community.
They
it's like
think
attacking a religion.
Yeah, it's like attacking a religion. Well, which is another point for not much critical. No one. Isn't it weird though? I'm looking through all these comments. Interesting one-sided story. Okay, well most stories are one-sided. Let's see. BS. If it were a legit story, it would have been picked up on long ago by other sources. This is the Liberty Mastermind podcast. Pretty sure the three of us, and probably most of our audience, are familiar with the fact that the mainstream media does not pick up on stories that it does not want to run for one reason or another.
Right.
Okay, so if it were legit, it would have been on the news. Furthermore, these types of personalities in our community that our community attracts would never allow a toxic command and an unsafe training environment. Oh, you know what? I can't even continue. Okay, this is so sad. In my 6th unit, this is my 6 years there. I have run into quite a few members that usually start off their conversations with "fuck that guy." I transferred in right after he was fired. Phew. Okay, so you never met him.
You know, whenever I've had experiences where someone is like thorough and good, like the half-assed people, they usually start off comments like that. Fuck that guy.
Okay, we're 53 minutes in. Yeah, I agree. We're 53 minutes in. I said I was going to tie my bow around this 20 minutes ago. The last part of there's a ton of comments. The last part of my story is, at my unit, like I said, there was a Navy SEAL senior chief that taught us, and a local law enforcement SWAT operator that taught us. The two of them worked together as our instructors. So we went into the shoot house, me and my teammates, and they said, "Okay, clear the room. You know, here we use simunitions guns, so it's your real service weapon, but with paint bullets in it. So it's the closest thing we have to realism. I love it. So you go into a room, and there's an actual bad guy with an actual bad guy gun that actually shoots you, and it hurts. And you walk in, and you have to manage the situation and shoot or don't shoot and select and direct. So I would go into a room where the Navy SEAL guy would say, "Hey, you did a great job." And I would go into the next room, which was the same scenario, and I would run it and do it the same way, and the SWAT guy would go, "You did terrible," or vice versa. You know, the SWAT guy would say, "Good job," and the Navy SEAL would say, "Bad job." And at first I was a little, peeved, but then I saw all my buddies, almost almost 100% of my buddies that I worked with, that I respected, all butthurt. This guy is bullshit. One guy said I did good, and the other guy said I did bad. I don't like it. And I started to form my opinion. I said, well, let's hold on a second. That's a gift. This is great. Now you have 2 separate tools in your bag, and whichever one you like most, fucking use that one. Awesome. Yep. Now you have 2 options. And they're not, I mean, I don't know why everyone was so butthurt. This is stuff I dealt with every day at training. Oh, this guy is going to say, I bet you he's going to say I did bad, and the other one will say I did good. Well, yeah, that's life. And this is tactics. This is not math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, and, well, you could have done better. No, there's a real world environment with real variables and real bad guy actors and real guns, and you're going in, you're getting into fist fights, you're throwing people around, you're making shoot, don't shoot decisions, people are chasing you with guns, you're chasing them with guns. Yeah, there's going to be a point when 2 instructors have different opinions on how you handle the situation. So yeah. I also know that a lot of my friends that were butthurt about instructors did not see the gift. They did not see the idea of training, and sometimes you get your feelings hurt. A lot of them had a hard time with critical evaluations. So that's my little bow I'm going to wrap around it. I think at least half of his comments that he was quoted on in the article are completely reasonable, and I've seen the same exact things happen with my own eyes. So in Sajnog's defense, I believe probably a majority of his claims are completely reasonable and probably truthful. On the flip side, I think at least the guy that wrote the article made him look like he had a very negative light himself. So I would love to have him on the show. That's it. I'm done with the hashing out the news story, and I think we can all see that this article is not what it appears to be on the surface. So I think it's time for a change of pace. What do we got? Jack on deck for your rescue hiring process?
Yeah, okay. So hiring for a volunteer organization is pretty simple. And I would ask that, people listening to this try to volunteer for an organization like fire or rescue or something. We need help. We just weeded out a whole bunch of people, and we still probably have 15 people on our squad. And of those 15 people, there's like 6 of us that run calls. And we're not, that's about par for everyone. Our organization isn't different than anyone else. We need good people to volunteer their time. You get lots of training, you learn lots of things. It's something that you should look into. Now, that being said, the hiring process, it's a basic background check. Drug charges are frowned upon, Killing people is pretty much a no-go. Unless you did it for the military, then, that's cool. Speeding, depends on how often you've done it. But it's fairly simple. You just got to have a desire to help people and not be lazy. I mean, there's lots of people that sign up just so they can get the T-shirt and say that they're part of it, and they don't do a goddamn thing. That really disappoints me.
Did this start with a hiring packet you had to fill out?
Yeah, I mean, there's basic paperwork. For us, you got to get a 10-year driving record and submit that, as well as all the basic hiring information that you would fill out for any job or anything like that. And then it's sent off to HR, and they do their assessment or whatever because governments are more concerned about being sued than they are actually helping people.
Oh, God, that liability monkey.
Oh, God, it is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I've got a friend, he's a Marine. He was in the mountain, I don't even remember the name of it, but his unit was, they fought in the mountains of Afghanistan. And we do a lot of mountain rescue and search and rescue. And he was stoked about joining up. And he's had a hard time fitting back into civilian life, which a lot of military people do. And he was really pumped up about being a part of this. And there were simple traffic violations that kept him from being a part of this. And I was arguing with HR about this and with the emergency operations heads. I was like, look, this guy has more experience than everyone in this county on rescue put together. Like, this guy is a badass, and you're questioning about him running a stop sign and getting pulled over for it. And he didn't like just blatantly run it. He just didn't completely stop. He did like a California roll or what the fuck ever. And you guys are not putting him on because of that. Like, how stupid is this?
Oh, dude, that's perfectly in line with government.
Yeah, absolutely. And so he's not a member of the squad because of some stupid violation. Wow. He rolled a stop sign. That was it. He didn't kill anyone. He didn't endanger anyone. It was at a 4-way stop that had a gas station on the corner, and there was no one at any of the other stop signs, but there was a cop in the parking lot who happened to see it.
God, cops are the worst, right?
I know. I better not. I work with tons of cops every day.
Me too.
Right. But that kept him from being on the rescue squad. And his knowledge was invaluable to me, and it would have been to the rest of the squad, especially in the mountainous situations that we find ourselves in from time to time. This guy would have been perfect for that.
Okay, so for the...
Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent.
That's great.
It just, the bureaucracy of all of it just infuriates me. Anyways, so you got to fill out paperwork, and they look at dumb shit like that because they send it off to someone. And then, you get hired on and you get trained and you do lots of fun stuff. And
did you have I don't know if you knew somebody or is there like an interview process, or was it kind of fill out the paperwork and you're in?
It's kind of a fill the paperwork out, and then the officers kind of chat with you a little bit. At least with our squad, the chief will chat with you, the assistant chief, blah blah blah, and maybe the captain. I try to meet everyone that applies and get a sense of who they are. I'm the captain, so there's 2 guys ahead of me in our squad, but I try to get a feel for who they are and if they're sincere about it or if they just want
the shirt.
Yeah, exactly. If they just want the shirt.
I'm familiar with that type. So would you say it's fair to say that speaking to people would be a good skill set to have?
Yes. Communication, as in everything else in life, communication is one of the most important things. If you can't communicate, take a fucking class. I don't know what else to say. Like, if you're dating, if you're married, in your job, in your, rescue life, or whatever, you got to learn how to communicate. And I know I'm kind of drunk right now, so, I fucking learn how to communicate. That's not really communicating well, but... Communication is key to everything.
Maybe we'll flesh out some episodes on communication.
Yeah, tactical communication.
Yeah,
Boom.
that's a great idea.
How can you tell your people that they've wronged you when you haven't told them what you expect from them?
That's exactly right. And another thing is, and this has been my thing for a long time. I've said this for a long time. If you want something done your way, do it yourself. If you want something done, then have someone else do it.
And tell them how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know.
Tell them what you expect.
Yeah. I never expect out of someone else what I expect out of myself. Because every time that I have, I'm let down.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't communicate to them unless I need to exactly, like, you need to be this dedicated to this thing. Well, I can't expect that out of everyone because this is a non-paid volunteer organization, you know.
Ooh.
So I can't say I expect you to run, 98% of the calls. I can't do that. That's not right. I don't even do that. I wish I had the time, but sometimes we'll get a call and my wife will look at me and just shake her head like, no, no. You've been gone all week. You're going to stay home tonight and have dinner.
We were busy running calls with you whenever we, came and did the unconventional entries with Pat.
Yeah, and that was a slow weekend.
Oh wow. You mentioned something, Jack. The drugs are frowned upon.
Yeah.
That made me think of the gal who is U.S. postal worker who they found in her vehicle.
Yeah. With a drug overdose.
All kinds of drug overdose. Yeah.
Yeah, she had all sorts of stuff in her. I mean, she was having a party in her mail car.
She did not call us for this damn party. I'm really
right. But I mean, I don't know. It's a full-time job that you don't get paid for, and I try to emphasize that. That was emphasized to me when I first joined, and I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it really is. I was at the eye doctor the other day, and he was like, oh, so you're in rescue? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I am. He goes, what else do you do? I was like, I'm an EMT. And he's like, how many hours do you spend a week, doing both of those things? And I was like, 60, 70, 80, 90 hours a week. And he was like, man, you must not have a life.
Damn.
But I still, even at 80 or 90 hours a week, I still have time to do this podcast. I still have time to spend with my family. I still have time to work on my startup business. I still have time to program. There's tons of time in the day if you just dedicate it and quit watching TV. I still have time to watch TV.
Speaking of drugs, Ox, would you like to fill us in on how to become someone of your stature? What the process would be from maybe the paperwork up through the interviews and whatnot?
Yeah. So mine won't be so much for the job because that's going to be a little different. I could give kind of give an overview on how to get into PA school, which is pretty standardized. A hiring process for job outside of school, that's going to look way different.
Yeah, give us either one.
Yeah, so I can do that. I can do kind of the big overview. I'm going to move quickly. And again, it's just going to be a big overview, like the, 30,000 foot, because there are whole books dedicated to, different facets of the application process, the interview, the personal statement, and so on and so forth. So again, just a quick overview. if someone's just tuning in, maybe a reminder what a PA is. We practice medicine. We go into every specialty that our physician and surgeon colleagues are in. We prescribe medications, we diagnose, we order labs, we're involved in surgeries. So we are pretty important, I think, in the healthcare community. Similar options if you want to treat patients, prescribe medications, diagnose, all that are NP. You can become a nurse practitioner or a physician, surgeon. Those are your other options. Just to give you a little background, why did I want to go to PA school? Like, why did I want to go the PA route versus medical doctor, doctor of osteopath, NP, RN? Those were other options I was looking at. One word, flexibility. The nice thing about the PA profession is I'm not locked into one specialty. I could start out in mental health and then go to emergency medicine or ear, nose, and throat or pediatrics or family medicine or kind of fill in the blank. There's a lot of lateral mobility, I guess you'd call it, in the specialties for the PA profession. And I really like that.
I like that too.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, I could pick up and go anywhere in the country and kind of look around for a PA job. So I like that flexibility. Before PA school, I did some Department of Defense funded work in North Texas, and the track I was on doing that, it was warfighter community, people that were like Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, all the way back to Vietnam, who had a traumatic brain injury, and we were kind of working with them as both research participants and patients. The track that I was on there kind of locked me in both geographically in North Texas and kind of locked me in to my position, my pay, that sort of thing. And I needed to be more involved in the decision making and have more flexibility and better pay and that sort of thing. So PA route made sense to me. Just to kind of flesh that out just a tad more, my end game, my ideal position, what I visualize in my mind, the guy I want to be, he's kind of a jack of all trades, master of nothing. And to be that, I need that flexibility. So a little background, and I should probably put one little disclaimer or reminder at least. I'm not on any admissions committees at any PA, programs. I'm not faculty at any PA programs. I'm not even adjunct. So I'm only speaking as someone who went through the experience. I'm a PA. And also a friendly reminder, we're talking about critical thinking earlier. Do your own due diligence. As I'm drawing from my memory when I went through the process, which was years ago, a handful of years ago. So obviously fact check what I'm talking about, do your own due diligence, and we'll do a quick overview. So PA programs, I'm pretty sure all of them will require an undergrad degree. So you've got to have an undergrad degree. I don't think in general it matters so much what the degree is in, as long as you can weave together a really good narrative of why you want to be a PA and have all the prereqs. My undergrad degree is in biology. I also did graduate work in neuroscience, some research in neuroscience, both bench and behavioral and clinical. So they all typically require an undergrad degree. I'd venture as far as to say they all do, but I'm not 100%. So you've got the degree, you've also got prerequisites. There are GPA, your grade point average minimum for your entire degree. And then they have like a separate GPA minimum for the math and sciences. There are also course prerequisites that can be a total knucklehead, because not every PA program out there is going to require the same damn course prerequisites. And so that should be one of the first things you do. And just as an example, I pulled up the program that I went to. Let me look at some of their courses.
Can you go ahead and pull that up, and let me jump in for a second?
Yeah, jump in.
So go ahead and pull that up. So what I heard Jackie, what I heard you say and Ox say both that is also going to apply to me. There's a little pattern here. So there are things you should be doing with your life or not doing, like not running stop signs or going to college. You should go to college and don't run stop signs. If you know what you want your career path to be, you're going to have to make some sacrifices beforehand. Like, don't do acid or heroin if you want to be a cop, or, don't have a terrible driving record if you're going to want to drive an ambulance, things like that.
Yeah.
So I would love to help people through the hiring process. I can't do magic. So if you have a few arrests on your record for, violent felonies, I'm not going to be able to help you there. But a lot of these career fields, which is a great case for being an entrepreneur working for yourself. But if you would love to be in, a volunteer field or a rescue field or medical field or police field, those things are kind of hard to do as entrepreneurs. I can't really hire myself out as a fake policeman unless I'm stripping, which is always an option. But that doesn't require any degrees.
Unless you started a private group, like, a police force that's contracted out.
I would consider it, except I have a sneaky suspicion I would be arrested for doing so.
Maybe.
Ox, you got that website up yet that you were going to reference?
Yeah, so just as a quick example, the program that I went to, they're required prereq courses, for instance, intro to psych, medical terminology, intro to stats, medical micro, anatomy and physiology, gen chem, English composition, so on and so forth. So I just gave an example of the program I went to. There does seem to be courses that are required across most or all schools. And two that come to mind, for instance, are anatomy and physiology and maybe gen chem, general chemistry. So some programs, or most of them, do seem to have sort of similar requirements, but they're not all the same. That's why I'm saying you got to go check into your programs and look at exactly what the course prereqs are. There's also, you've got to have the degree, you've got the prereqs. There's also some direct patient contact hours that are required. Most in every program that I looked at, with maybe the exception of UT Southwestern. I don't know that they yet have a minimum number of hours. I don't have that pulled up, but you got to have some direct patient contact hours. So that's, for instance, being a medic in your past, a corpsman, EMT, respiratory therapist, surgical or ER tech, physical therapist. We had a lot of those in my program. So you got to look at the schools that you want to go to and ensure that what you did professionally fits with whatever they consider, quote, direct contact hours with patients. I've seen some applicants on like Facebook forums and whatnot. They get in kind of a pickle here or there, not knowing if what they did professionally fits with what the program considers. So you just got to contact the program, reach out to them. If you have questions about your courses or your background, reach out. So speaking of programs, in 2017, there are over 200 accredited PA programs in the country, throughout the country. One thing to keep in mind, it sounds like a lot, but one thing to keep in mind is that since there are generally between, I'd say between 50 to max 100 seats in a PA program, you really want to maximize your chances of getting an offer by applying to numerous programs. So keep that in mind. The core online application is called CASPA, and that stands for Central Application. I promise I'm not the one drinking. Central Application Service for PA. So Central Application Service for Physician Assistants. It's called CASPA. It's an online thing. It's sort of a centralized service. You get online, you input your courses, and you have your letters of reference sent through there, and whatever else they do, I forgot. But CASPA is it's a portal through which you apply to the PA programs. I'm pretty sure every PA program uses CASPA. I think when I applied, the program that I ultimately wound up going to, I don't think at that time that they use CASPA. I'm not sure if there are any currently that don't, but that's going to be your main go-to to apply. Again, you send in your coursework, your transcripts, and stuff like that. It does cost money to apply through CASPA.
Mm-hmm.
Another big component of the application process is your personal statement. And that's kind of where you're going. You're going over what led you to want to become a PA.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, like it's I don't remember the number of characters or how many words or whatever, but it's pretty concise. I mean, people got to go through a lot of these.
Is that kind of like the where do you see yourself in 5 years job interview question? BS.
Well, it to me, I would think you're weaving together a narrative of your past that led you to the decision of why you want to be a PA. It's essentially to pique the admission committee's interest to get you an interview invite. So you want, again, there are different ways you can approach the personal statement. You can talk about your experience. You can talk about why you want to be a PA. I mean, there's a whole bunch of ways you can do it. But your bottom line, trying to get that admissions committee to go, man, I really want to meet this guy or gal in person. So that's sort of the key, the way I learned it. And again, that's not drilling into, there are whole books dedicated to the personal statement out there.
Wow.
So again, just a quick overview. Next component that's real important is your letters of reference. I think CASPA, it may be like 3 or 4 or something like that, but I'll give you an example. The program that I went to, they require 3 letters of reference, one of which must be a physician or a PA. So that's an important thing. And I'll give you one tip. What's that?
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say something stupid. Go ahead.
Feel free to chime in with. So one tip that I got when I applied from a faculty member at UT Southwestern, which is in Dallas, but she made a great point. At least with them, I don't know about every PA program, every admissions committee, but she made a great point that, in the letter of reference, you want the person writing it to really showcase like your personality, like who you are. In other words, it's less important the person writing the letter of reference. It's less important their title, and it doesn't matter if it's like the governor of Texas or whatever. If they can't really paint a beautiful picture of who you are, like your soul. You know what I mean?
I would probably discredit you if you got a letter of recommendation from the governor.
Yeah, and I was going to say in the military, a lot of my guys like to say this phrase all the time, like, "Hey, I know you just got promoted to chief or E7," or "Hey, I'm real good friends with the CO or the XO of the unit. Hey, can you give me a letter of recommendation?" And our process was, at least in my deployable community, it was, "Oh, you want a letter of recommendation? Okay. Write one up for yourself, send it to me, I'll look at it, and I'll sign it."
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I not with my application to PA school, but I wanted some letters of reference just in my files from the time I did my clinical rotations. And one of my preceptors, I was like, "Hey, can you write me a letter of ref?" And he's like, "Why don't you write it? And I'll look it over and then sign it." So I wrote myself.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. Do you think the people that accept these letters of recommendation, do they not know that? Is that a secret to them?
It's probably not. They probably wrote their own.
Jesus.
Wait, say that again.
Do the people who are reading these know that you're writing your own letter of recommendation?
And Jack said that they probably wrote their own.
Yeah, they might have too. Yeah, they go through so many of them. I think, we talk about pattern recognition on the podcast a
Big
lot.
time.
I think they're gonna see patterns and kind of be able to sniff out the good ones from the mediocre ones from the total crap ones. I would imagine. I don't know. Again, I don't sit on any admission committees. I'm not faculty or anything like that. But we just talk about pattern recognition. Going back to that tip that the lady from Southwestern gave us, again, it's not about the brand or the title of the person writing the letter of reference. Like she gave the example of someone like, I think it was like a governor or some big wig politician, something like that, wrote a letter of reference for an applicant and recommended the applicant to the PT program at UT Southwestern, which the applicant was applying to the PA program. So the point is that the person writing the letter of reference had a big title like Governor of Texas or whatever the hell it was, but didn't know the damn applicant was applying to PA school. So her point was, again, the title of the person writing it is not, so important, the rank, whatever. It's, does that person writing the letter of reference, can that person paint a picture of your personality, what you bring to the table, your charm, your soul? Like, can they do a good job at that? That's more important. That was one of my big takeaways from her. So again, you've got your letters of reference, you've got your degree, you've got all these prereqs, you've got to get on this central application service, and you've got to get your direct contact hours with patients. So it's kind of a bundle. And then once you get all this package, this bundle out, you will probably you'll get an interview invite. I can't think of any programs that don't have some sort of interview. Sometimes it's one-on-one. I've heard of two-on-one. One program in North Texas that I applied to, it was 2 faculty members and me. I hear some programs, they do some sort of group interview. Some of them require a writing sample. Like when you get to the interview day, they have some sort of writing requirements. I never did any of that. I never went, interviewed anywhere where they had that, but I've heard of it. You might do an interesting format for interview called MMI, multiple mini interviews, and I actually did that at UT Southwestern, which is you've got all these different stations or scenarios, rooms, and you go up to the door and you've got this scenario. You got like a minute to read the scenario, and then like the bell rings and you go into the room and you sort of work through this scenario, whatever it might be. And you've got like, I don't know, maybe it was like 7 minutes or something like that. And then you hear the bell and then you go to the next station. And so you rotate through these stations. That's why it's called multiple mini interview format.
That is a really cool idea. I like that.
It sounds scary as heck. And I certainly was pretty, worked up going into it. But I actually preferred that multiple mini interview over the 2-on-1 interview or the 1-on-1 that I was familiar with. You can kind of prepare for the the 1-on-1, the 2-on-1, those typical interviews. You can't prepare for the multiple mini interview. You have no idea what you're going to be walking into, so you really got to be on your toes. And maybe 1 or 2 stations into it, I was kind of enjoying it. You just have no idea what kind of weird stuff you're going to walk into. I'll give you a modified version of one that I did at Southwestern, but kind of walked into a room, and it was like a student and like a faculty member, and they had a bunch of stuff out on a table, and you had to work with the person in the room, the student in the room, to accomplish a task. Maybe it was build something or, whatever it was. But you walk into this room and you just don't know what you're going to walk into. And they're looking for different things. So anyway, there's some sort of an interview component. And that's kind of toward the end of what you got to do that will get you an offer. So after you do the interview, there's typically a waiting game. Like, you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, checking your email and phone a million times a day. You'll get an offer email. Sometimes programs will call. I heard of friends in North Texas who got, they went to Southwestern. They got a phone call. Some get emails, some get actual like typed up letters, some get all the above. I got all the above. And so that's kind of the process in a nutshell. If you don't get in, like if you go down this route, if you don't get in, apply again. And in fact, I would almost say if anybody wants to go this route and you're going to apply, they call it an application cycle. It starts in April and wraps up in the late fall, maybe early the next year. But they call it an application cycle. If you don't get in, you're going to want to apply again. And I would almost encourage anybody that wants to go this route, have that in your mind that, you know what, I'm probably not going to get in this time. Just sort of have that mentality going in that I'm probably not going to get in the first time. And so be thinking of, maybe work that you want to be doing to beef up your application, courses you want to take, whatever's going to be beefing up your application. Kind of going into it with that mentality may give you a little bit of you may feel a little bit more at ease. And the reality is, since there really aren't a lot of slots in PA programs and so many applicants, so many qualified, good applicants, you might not get an offer. I mean, there's a number of people that I know that are highly qualified, great grade point averages, great letters of rec, stellar GREs, thousands of hours of patient contact hours, and they interview well, but they just don't get in. It's kind of a numbers game. So I want to I mentioned UT Southwestern a few times, just to get a snapshot, for instance, to wrap it up. But okay, I'm pulling this from Southwestern's website. So a snapshot of the class of 2018, the PA program class of 2018, it says there were 1,500 plus applicants. Ooh. They interviewed 172 of those 1,500, so 10% it sounds like. And of the 172 that went through the multiple mini interview format that I mentioned, 48 got a slot. So the class's size is 48. So you go from 1,500 qualified applicants to 48 slots.
Damn.
It's a numbers game, so just keep that in mind. Did I have anything else? Yeah. That's it. And we may have some links in the show notes. I mentioned that I did a brief overview. There are tons of books out there that really go into depth with how to kick butt in the interview, how to kick butt, in your personal statement and so on. We might put those in the show notes, but that is PA school overview in a nutshell.
Dude, that was full of information. I didn't expect it to go that deep.
Yeah, that was intense. I thank you. That has made up my mind.
Okay. Everybody's going to PA school now.
No.
We're avoiding
I'm not going to PA school. Because I'm looking at maybe going into medic school at the beginning of next year, and I was like, well, maybe I should just go to PA school and then kind of challenge medic afterwards. And yeah, now I'm not going to do that.
Well, if you're looking for something easy, you can join the military, because that was the easiest hiring I've ever done. There was no interview. There wasn't even a physical fitness test.
Can you spell your name? Almost. You're in.
Let me wrap up our huge. We're at 1:30, so if you're still with us, thanks for sticking through. Let me wrap up. I'm going to skip military. I'm going to go through my law enforcement hiring process. And before I start, or I guess I've already started, so I'm going to give you the 1,000-foot view. We're not going to go into too much detail because there will be future podcasts on our podcast here that go in depth on each specific part of the law enforcement and other types of interviews. And on my article, on my website, uncensoredtactical.com, I do have several articles that will discuss the different segments of this. And I just did an article today, before we recorded, on what the oral board process is like, kind of setting the scene for when you walk in the room, what that's like. So I'll try and keep it to the 1,000-foot view. So, first off, you'll hear this quote a lot. You'll see it on my website, in my articles. You'll see it on the ebook that I'm about to release here, hopefully within the next couple months. And I do mentor people that are trying to get into the military or in law enforcement. I help guide you through the process and make yourself more likely to succeed through the hiring process. So go ahead and check out my website, subscribe there, or check out my YouTube channel, or shoot me an email using my contact form on the website. Okay, intro's done. First off,
Good job.
oh, thank you, sir. The whole name of the game in law enforcement is to take your application from the applicant pile, and when they go through their applications at the end, or during the process, or at the end, you want to take that and skip the no pile. You want to go past the maybe pile, and you want to get your application packet in the yes pile. That is the whole name of the game in law enforcement. And I heard a lot of similar things with both of you guys. Number one, if you know how to speak to people and have a conversation, you are way ahead of the game. So maybe take a class, maybe watch some YouTube videos, maybe talk in the mirror to yourself. I don't know. If you have a problem with that, then get some life experience. And the other thing, speaking of life experience, if you want a job in law enforcement, it's going to take some dedication way beforehand to not do stupid shit, or at least not get caught doing stupid shit, so that when you interview, you can say, nope, I never done anything stupid or crazy or illegal, or at least never got caught. So, even before you begin, you kind of have to have some life skills of being able to speak to people, because go figure, in law enforcement, you're going to talk to some people sometimes. You have some lifestyle choices to make before you even begin the process, but let's get into the nuts and bolts, because I'm going to give you guys some value to take away. You're going to fill out an application packet, and it's going to suck. They are going to expect you to investigate yourself. And that packet, without going too deep, that's what she said, is going to involve every address you've ever lived at, what dates you've lived there, what your neighbors' names and phone numbers and emails of when you lived in each of those places. Yeah, right? Because that's important. They're going to ask you all your mailing addresses. You're going to have to fill out all your driver's license info, your driving history, which you may not have access to your own driving history, so you have to go to the courthouse to get that. So step one is basically get all these documents together, fill out an investigation on yourself. Be honest, right? That's what they want you to do, be honest. I would advise that you use some critical thinking before that, and maybe contact me.
Maybe we should do a show on critical thinking.
That would be a long one. That's what she said.
That's what I was
Okay.
just about to say that.
Moving on. So you get all these documents together about your life, and you're going to say to yourself 1,000 fucking times, how am I supposed to know that? And you won't. So you either guess, or you take forever doing research, and you're like, screw this. So let me give you value right off the bat. As you're preparing your application packet, save all of your documents. When you print up your driving record at the DMV, copy that, put it in 10 different places, and save those. Because if you have to fill out a second application, you're going to need that again. So step one, all the documents...
EMT,
what's that? Go ahead.
in the EMT field do the same thing.
Yes,
and
and
they're
almost
all
any public
basically
service
the same. Just keep a copy.
of everything.
Always
Yeah.
keep a copy.
And the second point of value is after you complete your packet, definitely keep that, because I'll give you some insider info right now that you won't get anywhere else. When you walk into the door at another law enforcement agency and you say, I'd like a packet, and you fill that out, on there, they're going to say, well, it'll say it in the first packet, and your answer will be none. But on your second packet, it will say, list every other law enforcement agency ever that you've ever applied to and what the results were. So you're going to write that down, and then the second agency is going to call all those people on those lists. So if it's agency number 2, they'll call agency number 1, and they'll say, send us everything you got on John Smith. He just applied with us. And they will send a full packet to agency 2. So your background investigator will take your packet you filled out for his agency, and the packet you filled out for someone else's agency, and he'll go line by line, and he'll try and look for discrepancies. Whether they're super big and blatant, like you forget to list that you got arrested, or even if they're little, like how come you didn't include this one address? You included it with the other agency. So keep all of your supporting documents, like your transcripts, your driving record, your address history, all that stuff. Keep them. And when you fill out your application, don't expect them to give it back to you. Keep a paper copy, keep a digital copy, and every time you fill out another application, refer back to all the other previous ones. Boom. Done with that. Moving on. The rest is in no specific order. Don't ask me why, but in the state that I work, in Florida, every county and every agency does it different. And it will be usually a mix of most of these types of tests. So you'll have a basic written test, either a statewide one and or a specific one to the agency. So you come to a room, you do a multiple choice test, they prove that you can write English, boom, then you pass. Hopefully. I was in a written test for a city agency in Florida. There was a room of 25 people. We finished the written test. The instructor walks in, grades all the papers, and goes, "You've got to be kidding me." And he says, 3 people in this room passed this test. And he said, "This is a basic adult comprehension test." He said, "I'm just going to call 3 names. The rest of you just leave. John Smith, John freaking Smith, the other John Smith, everyone else get out." And I was like, what? I finished this in like 6 minutes. Is this a joke? Like, how do you not tie your shoes in the morning, but also go, yeah, I'm going to go be a cop? Super. So you'll do some sort of basic written test. If you're not good at those, you need to do some internal dialogue with yourself and figure yourself out. So we got lifestyle choices beforehand. You got your application, your written application, and you have your basic written test. And there might be several. You'll have a physical fitness test or a PT test. This will tell you almost nothing about being a cop, but for some reason agencies want it. I saw a 350-pound woman struggle to climb. I stepped over the wall because it was only like 24 inches high, maybe 30 inches high. But I saw a 350-pound young lady in front of me during the physical fitness test struggle. She rolled over this less than 3 foot high wall, rolled back towards the beginning point because she couldn't make it, jumped, rolled forward, landed on her head, and kept running. And the instructor was cheering her on the whole way. "You can do it!" As if he had some vested interest in hiring this already morbidly obese young lady to be a police officer. So that was a little weird.
I've seen a sheriff's deputy in, where the hell was I? Southern Mississippi somewhere, who had to spin his legs out, grab onto the top of the police car, and hop his way out of the front seat. He was so big.
Oh yeah, the deputy swivel. Yeah, that's common. No, it's real common. Oh God. So if you show up to listen, of all the things in this process that are a major pain in the ass in law enforcement, there is no reason you should even be breathing heavy at the end of your test. Let's be honest, even if you're applying like at the U.S. Marshals, it's not the Navy SEALs, okay? You show up, and that you know the requirements beforehand. They're all public record. And a lot of times it's in your application packet on the last page where it says, you will be expected to do this, this, and this. 20 push-ups in a minute, 15 sit-ups in a minute, which is ridiculous. And then they'll say, must run 1.5 miles in 15 minutes or less. Okay, well go fucking practice. Try it on Monday, see where you're at. Try it again on Tuesday, because it's not so difficult that you can't try it 5 days a week. Ask me how I know.
How do you know?
It's been there, done that. Okay. So if you can't do the PT test, that's public record, that you already know the answers for, and you already know the test for, just go practice that. And please, I know it sounds like common sense, but don't just think you can do it. Be largely proficient at that so that when you show up, the instructors go, damn, instead of, oh great, another guy passed. So, got that out of the way. This is all in no specific order because sometimes they mix this shit up. You may be asked, in Florida, I know you probably will. Some states don't allow it. There's a criminal code, or I don't know if it's a criminal code, but a state statute in some states don't allow an employment agency to use a lie detector test as a term of your employment. So they won't allow you to use that while you're being interviewed for your process. In Florida, if you want to be a cop, you'll go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, either way. Here's that process, 1,000-foot view. They say, you're doing good in the process so far. Next week, go see this shrink. You show up. It's very standardized. You walk into a room. It's really weird. It's anywhere from a boring standard test all the way up to fucking CIA mind games. Okay, so I'm not going to get too in the rabbit hole with the psychologist, psychiatrist, but you'll fill out several different multiple question tests. You'll also fill out some math tests and some English tests and some comprehension tests. But for the most part, you'll be in a room for hours going, do you want to kill yourself? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, well, let's do C. Wait, no. No is B. Okay. Do you hear voices in your head? No. Do you like to hear voices in your head? No. When is the last time you heard voices in your head? Never. So you'll hear all these questions asked different ways, a bunch of different times, and you'll be stressed, even if you're not stressed about the questioning and these multiple choice tests, you're stressed from just doing this bullshit for 4 hours. And they'll go, great, your 100-question test is over. In front of you, you'll find a 300-question test that's basically the same fucking thing. Ready, begin. So you sit there quietly and you fill in all these fucking bubbles. And do you like to drive on the left side of a semi-truck or the right side of a semi-truck on the highway? What? What the fuck does that have to do with being a cop? Okay. So then when you're done with all that, you wait some more. And then they say, okay, the doctor will see you now. Well, he's not a doctor, sure, but, it's kind of like dentist. He's not really a doctor, but sure, you walk in, you see the doctor. And sometimes, like I said, it's anywhere from normal bureaucracy to largely fucking mind game. Let's just say it's middle of the road. So you walk in and you have to play the do I shake your hand or not game because they might want to use that against you. So they'll look at you sternly, they'll say, take a seat. You're like, oh, hi, nice to meet you. Well, they might not like that. Oh, God, okay. My best advice for this is be yourself. They will want you to get upset. They will want to see some emotion. They might try some trigger points. They'll say, our machine says that, we should worry about you killing yourself. And you go, oh, well, I'm sorry that you think that, and anything I can do to help? Well, why would you say it like that? Why would I say what like that? That's what we're talking about. What? Okay, so you go down this rabbit hole. I like to tell myself when I go through that, because I've done it multiple times, I tell myself, okay, for every stupid question he asks me, that's 60 seconds less I have to deal with his ass. Boom. So I make it through this psychological evaluation. At the end, he goes, okay, you're free to go. I stand up, I walk towards his desk, I smile, I say, okay, well, thank you for your time, I hope it goes well, He goes, you're free to go. I'm like, all right, dude, whatever. I've had multiple different tests that varied across the spectrum, so it's kind of hard to teach you how to pass that one.
Are you detaining me?
Am I being detained?
Yeah,
well, let me find out.
Am I being detained? Am I being detained?
Am I free to go?
My answer is always either yes or no. Yes, you're being detained, and if I find that is not necessary, I will release you as soon as possible. But yes. Sorry, you just happen to be standing at the scene of a murder when a murder happened. So for now, you're being detained. Okay, next, you got your lie detector. This is either a VCSA, as a new term, voice stress analysis. VCSA, voice stress analysis test. There's a little microphone in front of you. You walk into a room. They go, okay, lie to me. Tell me the truth. Lie to me. Okay, now we're going to start the test. Fill out this worksheet real quick, and then we'll ask you the questions on the worksheet, and you're free to go. So you fill out the worksheet, and sometimes this can also vary anywhere from normal to wildly inappropriate. It might be, questions like, have you ever been in debt? Yes or no. How much? Have you ever had a traffic ticket? Yes or no. Your involvement in law enforcement? None or a lot. Okay, relationships. Have you ever had a detaining, what do you call it? Restraining order? Yes or no. Family life, are your mom and dad divorced? Yes or no? Do you have any kids? Yes or no? Do you have any child pay? I'm getting a little tipsy here. Help me out. Child support. Child support pay.
Yeah.
Do you have child support? Yes or no? Are you in debt to anybody? Yes or no? Money. Have you ever gambled? Yes or no? How much? I don't know.
Two drunk guys try to have a conversation.
Great. Well, two out of three ain't bad.
Right.
So that's basically voice stress analysis, and your lie detector is really similar too. Trying not to get too deep. We're at about an hour 50 now. Okay, so your lie detector, whether it's a microphone or whether they strap you to the lie detector machine around your chest and a butt pad and a finger scanner and all that shit. Either way, the test is you fill out a worksheet or you answer some questions during an interview. Then they put you on the machine and you answer the same questions. Then they take you off the machine and they ask you questions again. Excuse me. And none of it is about the responses that the machine reads. None of it. It could be a toaster oven with wires coming out of it. It would be just as effective of an investigation tool. So, my advice to you, before you do that, come talk to me. Also, I have a couple books coming out. I'm currently working on oral board books, so that'll bring us to our next topic. So you pass the lie detector, or maybe your oral board is early in the test, so maybe you do an application packet and a PT test and an oral board. Usually it's in Florida, it's early in the process, which is good because you can use the oral board to kind of grease the skids or to make the rest of your process a little more favorable. Because like you guys said, Ox, like you said with filling out your interview paperwork, they have no vested interest in you. So when you walk into a police interview, they say, hey, welcome, tell me about yourself. Well, that's because they don't know. So now here's your chance to say, listen, I'm fucking super awesome. I'm also not conceited, or arrogant, but I'm pretty awesome. And then they go, we really like this guy. Now, whether it's within policy or whether it's moral or ethical or not, if you want to get hired, it's much better to be the guy that after your oral board interview, instead of being like, well, he's a machine. Great. He said he would arrest his mother if she were, driving over the speed limit. So it's better to be the guy that when you slam your oral board interview and you do a great job, the people on that panel, they're people too. So wouldn't it be nice if they were like, hey, lie detector guy, hey, psychological guy, we're going to send Mr. Applicant here your way. And just so you know, we really like him, okay? We just interviewed him. He's great. So, have fun testing him, but, we really like him. Well, they can't say to lie to get your applicants hired, but they can say we really view him favorably. So I like to teach people to smack that oral board out of the park, because that's your best one-on-one or two-on-one or 10-on-1 chance to talk to a group of people that you're going to work with and impress them and smile and make them think, because they're people too. Even if they have to write numbers on a spreadsheet about your oral board, you still want them to think, I want this guy to be part of our group. Fuck yeah. So I just did an article today on uncensoredtactical.com about the oral board experience. Go check that out. And we will be going into more detail in the book that I will be releasing next. So yeah, smash the oral board out of the park. Background investigation. You may not do anything for this portion, but it is a part of the hiring process that happens behind the scenes. A background investigator will grab your file, and it's very boring, it's very tedious, and they're people too. And the best way to get this should sound familiar, the best way to get your packet into the yes pile, instead of the yes, instead of the no or the maybe pile, they're going to call all your references, they're going to check all your addresses, they're going to call all your work references and your bosses and your prior, they're going to call your neighbors. So when you put all these phone numbers and all these contacts in there, that's one of the quickest things. So here's your value, listeners. That's one of the quickest things that will slow up your process. So when a background investigator that works his 8-hour shift at a desk in the AC, drinking his coffee and he's bored, and he's like, damn it, I can't do cop work today because I have to go through all these packets. He's going to pick up a packet. He's going to go, okay, reference number 1, your neighbor, John Smith, from when you were in high school, who lived next to you in your apartment complex. Here's his phone number. Let me call him and ask about you. Oh, the number's out of service. Well, guess what? This packet's going to the bottom of my list. Or it's going to the no pile because you didn't take the time to check the phone numbers of your references on your own hiring packet. Or they call the guy and they say, hey, how long have you known our applicant? Oh, 10 years. Oh, well, you know what he's been up to for the last 9 years? And they go, well, I haven't talked to him in 9 years, but I knew him 10 years ago. So that's a quick way to get your application in the no or the maybe pile. So back to step one, fill out your application, and you got to be a little diligent, and whatever you put into it is what you get out of it. So the background investigation, you may not do anything for that, but your hiring packet is really going to determine how fast you can move through that. And I promise, the easier it is, so think about this when you're filling out your packet. The easier you can...
I'm sorry, you said the hiring packet, not the
application packet when you first apply for the job.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's all right. So while you're figuring out that first application packet for your law enforcement agency, you need to be thinking on each answer, how do I make this the most easy for my background investigator, specifically with your references, your addresses, your employment history. So if they go, okay, you used to work at McDonald's in 2007, and they call McDonald's and they go, yeah, we have him here at like December 31st, 2007 he started, so, basically 2008. Well, now he's like, why didn't he just say 2000? Like, did he start that day or did he interview that day? Because here I have 2007. You're saying he didn't start working until 2008. Like, what's the deal? Just think about if you were going through this packet and you didn't know yourself, how could you make it the most simple? And I know that sometimes the packets suck and they're written by the lowest bidder, but do your best. And also, here's another big piece of value. Don't be afraid to call your agency that you're applying for and say, listen, I'm sitting with my packet in front of me. Can I talk to someone in HR, please? Or maybe like a HR supervisor or like I don't know, someone that's like a captain or like a sergeant or whatever you have there. And say, I'm looking at this question and it says this, but I'm wondering what you would like me to put down. Or maybe I can talk to one of your background investigators so that I can make this easy for him. Or maybe I can leave him a note. Or maybe can I get his email address? That would be awesome. So there's your background investigation, which you don't do.
That's a great tip.
That's what she said.
Nah.
Okay, and like you guys said, maximize your chances. So some of that is your lifestyle choices beforehand. Don't do anything stupid, but it also means do things that are good. If in your interview process, if your oral board, which I love talking about the oral board, if they ask you this question, what kind of volunteer work have you done in the last several years? If they happen to pull that out of left field, wouldn't it be nice to go, oh, I've been, since I was in high school, all through my grade school and high school, I've been volunteering at the clinic down the road at the hospital with the vets. I help the old-timers kind of get their meds lined up, and, I like it. It's a good chance to hear some war stories, and, it makes them happy, makes me happy, and keeps me busy. Wouldn't it be easier to roll that right off the tongue instead of going, volunteer? What do you mean volunteer? So here's how you maximize your chances. You get involved if you're in high school and you want to go straight from high school to law enforcement, or if you want to go straight from high school to college to law enforcement, because you're not getting that military experience, because you might not have that life experience. One of the ways to compensate for that is to be involved in groups, be involved in volunteering, even though I firmly believe in making money. Some of these agencies would like to see that, and it's something that if you lack experience, you can use that to kind of get over that hump. You can say, I very much want to give back to my community. I can prove that to you because the last 3 or 4 or 5 years I've been volunteering here, here, and here. I teach young kids how to play basketball. I do this and that. So that's one way to maximize your chances. Also, if you have the knack for it, if you can speak another language or if you can learn another language, even if you're not great at it, you could even say, I'm not great at it, but I'm learning Spanish, and I'm taking some courses with my own money and my own time because I think that would be really helpful in this career field. Or if you know that there's a minority in your area, for some reason there's a bunch of Russians in the area that I work, that's really impressive to say, I looked up the demographics. I know that you have, English and Spanish people as some majorities here, but I also know that you have a pretty big, Russian population. So I took it upon myself to learn some Russian, and I'm not great at it, but I'm learning, and I think that might help on the streets here. Maybe not an interpreter level, but at least if I go to a call, I can I can say, do this, don't do that, what's wrong? And then they know, A, you looked up the demographics and you know the area, and they know that B, well, shit, this guy's learning a language. Okay, obviously he gives a shit about the job and he's put some forethought into it. So maximize your chances if you can with languages, with volunteering. And there's some prep work that you can do before the process, like doing a ride-along and bringing some questions. And then you might learn on your ride-along that, listen, I know personally the 2 people that will be on your oral board, and that's it. So you and me, let's grab a beer. I'll call them. I'll ask them what they're looking for. I'll call you. So you network. You find out what the oral board is going to be like. You might find out the secret questions that they like to ask. In the military, we called it stump the chump. So things like, where do you find the shoreline? Go find me some of that. And they're like, I don't know. And they go ask the engineers, and they go ask the maintenance people, they go ask the electricians. And they come back and they go, here's your shoreline. And they smack you and they go, no, idiot. The shoreline's over there across the water on the beach, dumbass. So chump the stump questions. So for law enforcement, like, what do you do if you have to get to a call and your car breaks down?
Did you say chump the stump?
Stump the chump. Yeah, I might have said it either way. I could go both ways. So in law enforcement, they might say, what do you do if a car's driving by and your car breaks down, but your friend's getting shot at? Well, the trick question answer for like a fail answer would be, I'm going to commandeer his vehicle. Which is, not a great option. They kind of suck you into that and make you think that's what they want to hear. So if you're talking to maybe someone on a ride-along, you can say, hey, what questions did they ask you on your oral board? And they'll tell you. There's no secret. So those are some ways you can really maximize your chances and prepare and do the extra work so that the people that are sitting there bored, for 8 hours a day listening to new, prospective employees bullshit their way through interviews, make it fun for them, make it interesting for them, and make it easy for them, and get your application into the yes pile. So, I think that's awesome. We did some behind-the-scenes info for Rescue Volunteer. We did some behind-the-scenes info, went into great depth with the PA stuff, which I had no clue about that, Ox. I'm glad you... Man, that could be an episode all in itself. There was a ton of acronyms seriously. I was not familiar with.
Yeah, we just barely touched on it. You mentioned something that maybe we could flesh out just a tad more, like the idea of when you're in this interview, this board interview, that what you're talking about should just roll off your tongue. Similar to that, what I see not only in the PA profession but in other jobs, people miss a great opportunity with an easy softball pitch question, which is, right when you get in, a good go-to that everybody asks in a lot of professions is, hey, tell us about yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's the first one.
You should be able to crush that. That's a great opportunity to showcase what you bring to the table. But when you knock out of the park that first question that a lot of different professions lead with, you're going to set the tone. You're going to set a good tone. What'd you say, Pat? Like crush the interview, or what do you like?
If you can really crush your oral board, you can you can make them earn a vested interest in you, so that they want you to succeed through the rest of the process, and they can make phone calls and give recommendations to help you through that. And I'll give you another piece of value right now, which is in your oral board. I have some really specific ways to help you answer questions, even if you don't know the answer. And one of the principles that I'll teach during your training, if you decide that you want me to mentor you, and this will also be in the book that I'm writing, I call it pulling questions forward from the future. So if I'm sitting here trying to ask you these questions that are on my pre-printed question list, and I say, okay, Ox, tell me about 3 of your strengths. And you go, I am smart, I am handsome, I show up on time. And I go, okay, tell me 3 of your weaknesses. And you're like, let me think. Okay, well, that's a problem. Those are 2 of the most basic questions. Now, here's how you pull questions from the future. Tell me 3 of your strengths. Okay, I'll give you one that I think is a really big strength, but I'm going to knock two questions out here for you. One of my strengths is I love a challenge. And I know that sounds easy and like that's kind of boilerplate and standard. I said this on one of my interviews and they loved it. And I said, here's the problem. And this will actually answer 3 questions, which is a bonus info for the listeners. The problem with my strength of loving a challenge is if I don't have a challenge, I get bored, and I know personally that my work output slacks, and I get a little lazy, and I kind of get comfortable where I'm at. But here's how I fix that. I do have the ability to know that I'm not being challenged. I do kind of sometimes it takes a bit, but I can recognize it. So what I do is I go right to my first line supervisor or my coworkers, and I say, listen, is there anything you need like extra on your squad, like that I can do to help out? I bring this and that and this skill set to the table. Is there a class you think I could take? Like, are you short on drug ID people? I can go take a drug ID class. But just so you know, sergeant or lieutenant or whoever, if you're looking for something else to get done on the squad, I would love if you would give me a chance to kind of help out and do some extra work. I'm kind of getting bored, and I kind of need something I'd like to help out, and I kind of need like a distraction or something new. So they sit back in their seats and they're like, shit. Well, A, he can talk, which is good. B, he can think on the fly, which is good. C, he put some thought into this, which is good. D, we now don't have to ask him, tell me a weakness. We now don't have to ask him, how did you overcome that weakness, which is the bonus question. Because if they ask you your weaknesses, if you already tell them, well, here's how I kind of overcome that sometimes, that looks awesome, and it shows that you're intelligent, and it shows that you give a shit about your weaknesses. And
Right.
man, I'm going to cut it short. I can go for hours on this. We're at the 2-hour, 5-minute mark.
And you called that pulling
Questions from the future.
That's awesome, and that
It really is.
I don't think I've ever heard that. And I said,
And you haven't. And I promise you, if you go on police1.com or if you Google oral board questions for police, none of them will tell you that. My book does.
And I've even I mentioned that there are entire books on the different components of the PA program process, and one of them is there is a book that's just dedicated to. There's probably more than one, but there's a book dedicated to just the interview, and I don't think I remember hearing anything that kind of fits that description, but I think that's fantastic. And also another point is that tip that you just gave us, that's transferable to other professions.
Oh yeah.
Not just police, not just first responder, not just PA, but I mean, you could take that any profession and apply it. That's badass.
On my last deployment, I had a bunch of people that, because I was at a reserve unit this time, I had a bunch of people that were leaving the Coast Guard and going to, EMT or firefighter or police jobs. And when we had some downtime, they were always like, can you help me prep for, my interview? And I was like, yeah. And so I'll say repeatedly, I'll give them that principle of stealing questions from the future, and I'll say, okay, when you sit down in the chair, instead of like waiting for them to ask the question and you going, okay, and then answering, here's another huge, I'm giving this shit away. Another huge bonus is the more questions you can knock out of the park initially. This is what I have a chapter in my book called Shaping Your Interview. So you decide which theme you want to use and how to shape this kind of roller coaster experience. So the more questions you answer correctly right off the bat, the more ability you have for them to go, okay, the next question, blah, 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 blah. And you go, after you've knocked so many out of the park, because they're so impressed so far, now you can go, and because you've pulled questions from the future, now you can go, you know what? I don't know. And they go, okay. And they say, next question. That's it. It's easy. So in the military is like that too. So the way you do that is you get a bunch of questions written down that you think they're going to ask you, and you ask on your ride along, hey, tell me all the questions you can remember and all the variations of it. And you steal questions from the future, and you write them down, and you memorize 1 or 2 different methods for answering each question. You learn all the tricks that I'll teach you about not getting caught in trick questions, and so that when they ask you, can you tell me 3 strengths? You go, yeah. So you see what I did there? You're like, yes. So you're like a baseball player, and you're primed, and you got that. I'm not great at sports, but I guess they put the bat behind them, and they're like ready to do their swing thing. So the ball comes in, they're like, yeah, pitch it, let's go, pitch it, bang, and they hit it. Instead of, oh, I'm up here, oh wait, he's pitching, crap. So you don't want that, oh crap moment. You want, bring me the next question, do it. That's the feeling you want. And the way you do that is by preparing and repeating your answers over and over and over to yourself, and then modifying it. So recording your answer and listening to it, writing down your question and saying it and memorizing it, and then reading it from the postcard. A lot of people, when they write stuff down, they try and memorize it, but you're allowed to cheat, so you can read it to yourself over and over, and then try and say it out loud. And then there's talking in front of a mirror, and then there's talking to a friend, and then there's talking to a pretend oral board, and then there's getting dressed in a shirt and tie, which is uncomfortable, and sitting in a chair up straight, which is uncomfortable, and then pretending all over again. So that gives you the ability for when they get ready to pitch that baseball, you're like, come on, do it, do it, do it, instead of, oh look, here comes the pitch. So when you do all that crap, man, I not only am I super awesome, but I'm also super humble. But I've had people on oral boards that I walk out of the room with 7 or 8 people I've never met, and they're grilling me. And at the end of it, I've had guys like SWAT guys and road sergeants and commanders sit back in their chair and go, "Wow, awesome!" They're like, "Let's do it." I've literally had them like their jaws open at the end. They're like, "Oh, wow! Well, listen, we're not supposed to tell you passed, but if you pass, we would introduce you to the chief next. But let's just go introduce you to him now." And I've done that. So I've also mentored a bunch of people in the military. And this whole thing, the book that I'm working on started, and my mentoring started because I mentored a few people at my unit. When I left the unit and got hired, they wanted to leave the military and get hired, so I helped them. And their friends heard about it. And then I literally spread like a little mini virus. So I had people they were trying to get hired at NYPD that had heard through a friend that I help people. I had people in California recently. I got a buddy that just got hired in one of the San Antonio, no, it's Texas. I don't remember, but
there's a lot of those in California.
Yeah, so one of them, he called me. He's like, "Dude, I'm kind of nervous." I'm like, "Bro, you got this. Give me a couple hour phone calls next week and you're good." So that's how it started, and then it's just caught on like wildfire. And then I had the interview for the listeners. I was interviewed on Jack Spirko's thesurvivalpodcast.com. I think it was 1987 was the episode.
Yep.
And I talk about my tactical lockpicking and a little bit about law enforcement. But in there, I said that I mentor people that are trying to get hired. And since that happened, I've had a bunch of people that have never heard of me or my friends, but they heard my interview and they've been contacting me, and I've been mentoring people over the internet through email and phone calls about how to get through the hiring process, and that's why I'm doing the book. So check out my website. I do have a few articles on the hiring process, but there are many more on the way. And anything else for me, Ox or Jack? Because I think one of you guys has the wrap-up coming soon.
We're just getting warmed up. We've got... more out.
I'd be happy to hit end and do another one after this.
I think breathalyzer test for you too. No, I just one little tidbit. What I did in prepping for the standard PA school questions, and you might have said it. I took 3x5 cards, and I'd write the question on one side and the answer on the other, and I was out. I'd take my stroll out in nature, and I was rehearsing. So, in different variations of the same questions, kind of like what you said. So, don't forget the 3x5 cards. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a great tip. We earlier in the Deconstructing the News segment, we talked about training in daytime for nighttime operations and how kind of silly that is, mm-hmm. that concept. And you pointed out the practicing for your oral boards in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to approximate the environment, what you're wearing as much as you can. I thought that was a great suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Because that's one of the worst things is you wake up early and you have a new haircut, so you're trying to figure that out. And you're driving to a place that you probably never drove to before. So you got your little, this is like right out of that article I just published today. So you get your little map app open on your phone, you put it on your dashboard, or you hold it in your hand, you're driving with one hand, you're late, you don't want to get coffee because you don't want to spill it, and you're like itching your neck the whole time because you don't usually wear a suit and tie. You show up.
Right.
You're nervous. You got that armpit sweat going. You're meeting people that have no vested interest in you, and they're like, "Oh, hey, what are you here for? Oh, interview? Sit over here for 30 minutes. They're not ready." So you sit in this weird chair, and you're watching perps come in and out all day. And then you get shuffled to a back room. Then you get shuffled upstairs by the chief's office, and you're in this really nice room that you wouldn't be in if you worked there because only the chief goes in there. But you're at this big conference table by yourself, or you're outside listening to someone else's interview, and you're like, man, he's really stumbling in there. Oh, this sucks. I can hear every word. That means whoever's out here is going to hear me. Oh my God. So, if you can practice a lot of that and get it out of the way, that helps. You might want to sit at your dining room table and figure out, where do I put my hands? Do I put them on the armrest? What if there's no armrests? Do I adjust my tie a lot when I talk? Should I record myself, video, audio? So I actually, this is one of the biggest tips for the lie detector that takes extra effort. If you need some help and you need to pass that, it's worth the effort. But you put yourself in a suit and tie, and you wrap a little rubber band around your chest. And you sit in a little chair, and you ask yourself the same questions. You ask some people, "Hey, can you ask me all these questions on this piece of paper? Don't ask why, just do it." So you get on the phone maybe, and they ask you the questions, and you answer, or you pretend to answer. And you sit in your little chair, and you got your little finger hooked up to a little clamp. You got a little rope around your chest. You got your suit and tie on, and it's awkward. But you know what? When you do it in real life, you're like, "Oh, this again," which is a good feeling.
Right.
Man, I'd like to have him on the show. I reached out to him. You reached out to him. Let's try and get Chris Sajnog on here. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see what we can do. Woo! We kick butt, guys.
Yeah, there was some good fire in that.
Yeah, I agree.
Jack, doing our closing?
Yeah, I'm supposed to wrap this thing up, and I'm supposed to give some inspirational quote or something, but so I've thought of several good things throughout this episode, and I didn't type them out while I was thinking about them, and then we've changed subjects, and then I would think of something else, and then we'd change subjects or move on a little bit, and I'd think of something else, and now I can't remember a single freaking thing that I thought. So I guess I'll just kind of wrap up on the last part of it. Confidence and communication when you're in an interview, that's important. I mean, like Ox, he writes down 3x5 cards, and Pat, he practices over and over, and I don't really do any of those things. I just kind of wing it, and
if you're good at that, use it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm a pretty confident guy, and unless I've been drinking, I can usually communicate fairly well.
I get it.
Maybe I just thought one of you guys said something that made me think of a quote that might be appropriate. Whether you're in oral board for law enforcement or first responder or PA school or whatever, or even in high stakes call, like Jack, you get called out to something. A quote that a fellow PA named Kevin Lace told me before I started clinical rotations. It might have been something he heard in the warfighter community. He's a sailor, or was a sailor, corpsman, and Naval Special Operations. He said, "Calmness is contagious." So to kind of keep that in mind as a mantra, a reminder to yourself when you're kind of in these stressful situations, like you said, like Pat said, you got your tie on, you're in all these awkward locations and people and whatnot. Calmness is contagious.
Yeah, big time.
So I think that might be a good little mantra to wrap up with. Yeah. Calmness is contagious.
And just because the interview's going bad at some point, it doesn't mean that it can't turn around. I got laid off from a tech job one time in the early 2000s, and I needed some freaking work. So I applied for an accountant's position for like medical billing or some bullshit. And the interview was going so bad. I mean, God, it was so bad. It was just embarrassing bad, right? Or embarrassingly bad. So, and she knew it was going bad, and I was just kind of wasting both of our times. And she was like, okay, so is there anything else you got? And I noticed this picture of this like tatted up guy that was like autographed on her bookshelf. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Hey, who's that picture of? And it turned out to be was it her nephew? Anyways, it was Vanilla Ice. Okay, so the funny thing about it is, like, the day before, this was like a Monday morning, right? The day before, I had watched like an True Hollywood Story, or Where the Fuck Are They Now, whatever thing, on Vanilla Ice. So I had all this fresh information in my head about
When you say
Vanilla
fresh,
Ice.
do you mean new or do you mean like fly?
New. Like new. And so we talked about her nephew or cousin or whatever he was to her for like 45 minutes after that, and I got the job.
Sweet.
I know nothing about accounting.
I don't think anybody does.
Right?
Dude, I think Vanilla Ice is out in Florida doing like real estate or landscaping or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's always a chance to turn it around. But, in the interview, she was asking me stuff, and I was I had already failed it in my head, and I was just like, God, you're sucking at this. Like, you need this job. What the fuck are you doing? You're blowing this, And meanwhile, she's talking to me, and I can't get out of my own head. And then she could tell that I wasn't even listening to her because I was in my own head. And she's like, can you just repeat what I said? And I had no fucking clue what she said. And yet I still got that job. But after I was like, hey, it doesn't matter anymore, I relaxed and I became myself and blew it out of the park after that. It was the weirdest thing ever. But you can turn that stuff around.
All right,
Yeah.
well, fellas, unlike my normal sex life, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, because if I don't think we ever will. So check out our website, libertymastermindpodcast.com. Also check out uncensoredtactical.com for some extra resources. A couple articles in there we referenced today. And actually, if you're here for math, you're going to be a little upset, but I did realize our Skype call started early, and then we had a pause in the episode. So our Skype call is at 2:20. I think our audio recording is at 1:38 right now. So thanks for checking us out. Subscribe, click on our links, take some action, check out our website, leave a comment, contact us, and we really appreciate you guys spending some time with us. Hopefully we'll see you on the next one.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.